The manufacturing sector is on its way to recovery and has erased losses incurred in March. Absa's Purchasing Managers Index rose by 4 points to reach 50.9 index points in April. The improvement in the headline PMI was driven by increases in 4 of the 5 key components. But it's only the new sales orders index which is in positive terrain and is above the neutral 50-point mark. The current PMI is more or less in line with the levels recorded in February and above the average recorded during the first 3 months of the year. The business activity index rose from 46 to 49 in April, and if demand holds up in the coming months, business activity is expected to lead to an increase in new sales orders. Paul Makube, who's a senior agricultural economist at FNB Agribusiness, joins me in studio now. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. What contributed to this improvement that we've just seen?
The improvement in the PMI is as a result of the improved confidence in South Africa, and as a result of the improved political situation and the environment. A relatively strong exchange rate in the previous month also contributed to that.
Something that's not doing so well is the fuel price. It keeps on increasing. How is that going to, what factors have led to that increase of the fuel price?
The fuel price is a combination of 2 factors, mainly the weak exchange rate relative to the previous month, and also the increase in the Brent crude oil price by almost 7%. So those are the factors that actually had led to an increase in the fuel price. But you must also remember that apart from these factors, recently we have seen an increase in the fuel levy and all other administrative costs that have been included in the basic fuel price.
As a consumer who is affected by these increases in VAT, in fuel price, is there going to be a point where these pressures ease, and what's going to lead to that?
These pressures might only ease if you have a situation where the rand pulls back from current weakness and strengthen, and also the fact that the international crude oil price is relatively expensive. If it decreases, then we might see these pressures decreasing. But you must remember that the food prices have been relatively contained over the past few months, and as a result of the increase in production over the past 2 years, we are expecting a relatively good crop of grains this season, and also have a carryover stock which is quite huge, and that has helped contain food prices, which has been a benefit to consumers.
Mm-hmm. With these increases, do we expect to see inflationary outlook being altered?
Definitely, if there is further increases in the crude oil prices, and also the rand remaining relatively weak, we might see further increases and putting pressure on the inflation outlook. Although from the food inflation side, we still expect further moderation. There isn't much pressure on that, but the further increases might actually temper with the inflation outlook, and also have an influence on the Reserve Bank in terms of whether to give another cut through the course of the year.
Mm-hmm. With these increases, especially in the VAT rate, government has tried to balance these complaints from consumers by saying they're going to take a look at zero-rated items and perhaps expanding that list. There was an economist here, Lebohang Peko, who was suggesting that South Africa needs to, in order to manage these kind of pressures, have a price limit for certain items. Is that a feasible thing that we can do?
I think one has to look at the context in which that proposition is made. Remember, we're living in a free market environment where the supply is determined by the demand situation as well. You have to balance the supply and demand, and producers are encouraged to produce if there is an incentive in terms of price. And if there's no incentive, that's when you have producers not producing more. So a typical case is with regard to the agricultural sector, where we had a situation where there was a bumper crop, and given the high stock levels and the lower prices, it discouraged producers from producing more. Hence, we have a reduced planted area of some of the grains, and producers cannot produce if they are not going to be compensated for that production. So it requires a bit of understanding and research to look at it. You must also remember that we come from previously, before 1994, we had what you call boards that controlled the prices of food, and that brought about inefficiencies in the system and so on. So we have seen an open market system post 1994 with the deregulation of marketing boards, which has helped the agricultural sector to actually flourish and bring about efficiencies in the system. So yes, that particular point has to be discussed in detail to look at various impact on the economy.
Paul Makube from FNB, thanks so much for your time on SABC.